all tech has vulnerabilities, all tech has bugs, and all tech will mess up. That's a reality. You can innovate around security and stability. Innovation is like, how do I build more product sooner and more valuable to users today instead of always playing feature catch up? But I think you can also really focus on innovation around stability and security and leveraging ways that can be less of a hindrance and a blocker can actually empower the ability to deliver things faster and smoother.
My guest today is Niko Papademetriou. Niko is the co-founder of Q, and as I come to find out, shares an eerily similar story to my own. In a past life, Niko was an investment banker. Then, like so many of us, he stumbled into the chaos and joy of running a restaurant, plunging toilets, cooking steaks, and wondering if payroll would bounce the next morning. Today, he helps some of the largest restaurant brands in the country navigate the other side of that chaos, building infrastructure for scale, turning fragmented systems into one clear source of truth, and redefining what a POS platform can be in the age of AI. In this conversation, we talk about what it really means to build for enterprise, why structured data matters more than flashy features, and how Niko sees AI shaping the systems that power restaurants from the kitchen to the boardroom. This is a conversation about pain, perspective, and platforms with someone who knows exactly what it's like to run a business and what it takes to transform how they operate. But before we dive into that, a special thanks to our sponsor, ClearCOGS. ClearCOGS is a leading provider of demand forecasting software for the restaurant industry because the path to greater profits is always clear when you know what's ahead. And if you're liking this conversation, hit that like and subscribe button. Now, I give you my conversation with Niko. All right, Niko, how do I pronounce your last name?
Papademetriou.
Wait, Greek? Where's that come from?
No, it's actually Irish. It's funny. Most people think it's Greek, and they would actually be right. Yeah, no, it's Greek. It's not Irish. It is definitely Greek.
Greek family that goes to Ireland? Is that the general story that now is in the U.S.?
I've been fortunate to do quite a bit of international travel. I've never been to Ireland, Scotland, UK, England. Yes, but yet to go to Ireland. So it's just a silly joke that I throw in now and again, but it's very, very Greek. My father was Greek. My mother, believe it or not, is German. They were both immigrants. So I'm 50-50. When I was a little kid, and I love saying this because kind of a beautiful thing about America, I said I'm 50% Greek, 50% German, and 100% American. So, yeah.
That might be one of the most American lines I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Greek food, possibly my favorite food. Definitely my wife's favorite food. Is your favorite food?
Oh man, I mean, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say it was Greek food because it is. I would say like in America, if this makes any sense to what I'm going to say, like in Greece, Greek food for sure. Made by like grandmas, yayas, as we call them, or like families, I'd still say Greek. But in general, just as food I consume in America, probably Italian, like pizza, salads, pasta. I am a big pizza guy. So maybe Italian in America, but Greek overall.
Probably the most controversial question I'm going to ask. And I'm not just asking the largest Q customer. I'm asking, what's your favorite pizza?
Because I like so much pizza. I mean, I love a deep dish like a Giordano's or a Gino's East or something out of Chicago. I love a bar pie out of Chicago. I love a New York slice. I like a nice brick oven, DOC style, real Neapolitan pizza. I like a Celeste pizza out of the freezer that was done on the back of the cardboard when you microwave it. I mean, my son and I make pizza at home sometimes, and I'll tell you more about the toppings because I like all sorts of pizzas, but I like a pepperoni pizza if it's just simple. My little game changer that makes like an average pie better than average is putting pepperoncini peppers or banana peppers, either one. So like a pepperoni and pepperoncini or banana pepper, it just adds some pop and some flavor. I'm controversial in that I like white pizzas a lot. Like I might like white pizzas more than I like, red sauce pizzas.
There's Italians that are rolling in their grave right now.
I know they are, which is why, I'm not Italian. It's okay. But I will tell you, like, I love things like sausage and goat cheese and like caramelized onions. And I love that kind of flavor profile on pizzas a lot. So,
well,
yeah.
I go back to your pepperoni and banana peppers. That is by far my favorite. That's my go-to.
I'll tell you what, this is another story, although we've got some time. I lived in Cleveland, Ohio for almost 3 years, and there was a bar across the street from my condo. I worked like very, very long hours in that part of my life. And sometimes I'd get home at midnight or 1 a.m. and the only thing open in all of downtown in the 4 blocks between the building I worked in and my condo building was this bar. And they had an incredible bar pie there. And it was a white pizza and I'd get pepperoni and banana peppers with their cheese blend was half provolone, half mozzarella. So a little bit saltier than just a standard mozzarella. And then they put little chunks of ricotta on it.
Yeah.
And the problem was after a long day and you're really hungry, I hadn't eaten since noon probably. Sometimes I would just eat that pizza, like eat the pizza. And it didn't make for a healthy dinner or a good night's sleep. But yeah, it was very, very good.
We all have our guilty pleasures after a long day. Pizza's probably not the worst vice.
That's probably true. And those are both true statements.
What were you doing back in Cleveland, Ohio?
So I, like so many people now, have had multiple careers, to be honest with you. So I got an undergrad degree in economics at that. And I went into finance. I went into investment banking.
Oh, you were one of the numbers guys.
Yeah. I mean, I'm good with numbers, good enough. Better than your average fare. But yeah, I did that for about 3 years. And I worked for much of that time after graduating, did a couple internships and whatnot during undergrad. But yeah, I worked for a super regional called KeyBank Capital Markets. And I lived right there in downtown Cleveland. I worked in the tallest building between Chicago and New York. Talk about
that's a good line.
Like, if Cleveland's got nothing other than the tallest building between Chicago and New York. So it's 58 stories, I think. And it was pretty neat. When you went up to the top, you could see Canada on the other side of the lake, which was, I don't even know, 50 or 80 or 100 miles away or something, but you could see Canada from there. So it was pretty fun.
Did you see Chicago?
You could not see Chicago. It was too far away over to the west because it was really across like Lake and across Michigan. So it was I don't even know, 300 miles maybe to Chicago.
Yeah. How do you go from investment banking, finance into technology?
Easy, actually. So 2008 happened and I was in iBanking. There's like, kind of a lot of up and outs. Either you're on to the next level or you
private equity, MBA.
Well, not even that. It's just like, even just staying in investment banking, like you can't be an associate for 8 years. You're an analyst for 2, maybe 3 max. And then you either go get an MBA or you can skip it if you're really good and you can be an associate for somewhere between 2 and 4 years or so. And then you're either out or you're a VP. 3 or 5 years, you're either out or you're director. 2 to 4 years, you're either out or you're a managing director. It's like self-select. And so my whole goal in life as a young, recent college grad was work your butt off, do 100+ hours a week, make sure you were first there, last out, and you just always got your work done on time and had as few errors as humanly possible. And get through the analyst 2 or 3 years and get that associate bump without having to leave and get your MBA. I mean, it was literally my singular focus for the 2 years and 10.5 months that I was an analyst. And
sounds like you really hated school.
I just felt like I actually loved learning and I love learning and I loved the right classes and the right professors. But I definitely felt like in the grand scheme of things, a lot of aspects of school were not a waste of time, but that I could otherwise be learning and doing more in the workforce than being in school. And so I didn't want to go back is the point. And so I worked really hard to try to do that. And I made it to the 3rd year. I got that 3rd year offer, that bump. And so I got that and I was not looking at MBA programs or anything. And 2008 happened. a third of Wall Street got laid off over the coming 6 or 9 months. And there's an inverse relationship between how well the stock market's doing and, what B school you can get into. And so by the time everybody had been laid off and I made it to sort of the very end of that time frame, everybody had, immediately got and applied to B school, all the young folks, all the analysts. And so instead of getting in maybe a top 20 or 30 B school, I probably would have gotten in a top 50 or 60. And if you want to stay in competitive investment banking, like there's kind of no reason to get an MBA if it's a 50 or 60 program. And so I got laid off and I never made it to that associate bump without leaving to getting the MBA. I was 3 months away. And so I moved back to the DC area, which is where I'm from. And I had no idea what I was going to do. Applying to jobs in finance still. And, you're doing second, third round interviews, and then you're talking to people and they're like, I love you, I'd love to hire you, but I just laid another 100 people off last week. And after that happened, I don't even know, 6, 7, 8 times over the course of 4, 5, 6 months, I was like, well, I guess I have to change my perspective. And so I had a good friend and I met another guy, and believe it or not, we had the bright idea of opening a restaurant and a nightclub. And I did always think that I'd be 40, rich and retired. And I'm being honest, I thought, get my banking 20 years, make a bunch of money, work real hard, and then sort of take a step back. And I thought when I'd be in my 40s that I would open a restaurant because I love people and talking and cocktails and food and culture and experiences and just communicating and sharing things. And instead I was 26 and out of a career. And I decided to open a restaurant and a nightclub with a couple other guys.
Funny how we all end up in restaurants in different ways.
Well, I had worked in them when I was younger, but like in high school and college and whatnot. So I at least knew a little bit about them, not much, but a little bit. But yeah, that's how I found my way more officially, more formally to restaurants. Yeah.
So about you? I had the opposite experience on the investment banking side. So I did my internship in investment banking in 2009 when there were no deals and nothing going on and everybody had been laid off. And it was all the top guys just looking around like, what do you want to learn? What do you want to do? Let me walk you through this and that, because there was no activity whatsoever.
That was not my experience. We were very, very busy in 6, 7, and 8 and even through the crisis. But yeah, I mean, we'd get the classic Friday at 5. Managing director would walk in the room in the bullpen or something and say, I need PIBs on these 17 companies by Monday morning and public information books or public information packets. And, it's just a bunch of trivial menial work. And so we'd go and we'd put a 300 or 400 page book together for 13 companies, and we'd be in the office for 30 hours between Friday at 5 and Monday at 9. I mean, it's
a lot of that menial work where the commas need to be in the right place. Every number needs to be right. I realized as a dyslexic ADHD kid, this is not for me, and ended up going and getting in the restaurant business just a few years ahead. Funny enough, I was in the DC suburbs. You said you're from DC. Where are you from in DC?
I grew up in Old Town Alexandria and went to school around here and went to a school called St. Stephen's St. Agnes, which is in Alexandria. Now and for the last 15, 16 years, something like that, I've lived in DC proper, in Northwest DC. And now for the last, 8 years, my family and I have lived up in Chevy Chase, but in the little corner of Chevy Chase that's in DC still. So yeah.
We were downtown Silver Spring, and everyone's like, well, it's kind of Maryland. I'm like, what's in the Beltway? You're 3 blocks from the little tip. DC's not that big.
What restaurant was that?
I was Jimmy John's. I was Jimmy John's franchisee.
Oh, nice.
The Maryland side where the traffic is awful and the infrastructure's bad. I was always envious of the Northern Virginia side.
The traffic's still bad on the Northern Virginia side, but the infrastructure is far superior. That is very, very true. Man, I still remember right when Jimmy John's came to the DC area, to the market. And I think one of the first ones, if not maybe even the first one, was in Alexandria. And it was right by the courthouse, the federal courthouse. And I remember going there and I'd heard about this, Jimmy John guy and whatever. And I got the ham and cheese, whatever that one's called. And it was really good. And then I think I got the 2-to-1 and I was like, oh, that's really good. And I was like, these things are mighty. They're quite good. I didn't know that you were in the game, man. I didn't know you were on the Jimmy John set. That's cool.
I was, and most restaurant people, I walked in not knowing much. I was, I always say it was kind of like The Bear, the FX show, except, I was a semi-delinquent college kid that was buying a restaurant. And of course, I bought the restaurant that nobody wanted. None of the franchisees would buy. But I'm like, I think I can make this work. It's pennies on the dollar. Why not? And then you wake up, it's like, oh, shoot, the air conditions out and the grease traps overflowing. They have 3 employees and, you just got to kind of figure things out. So what was that like for you? You walk in, did you start a restaurant from scratch? Did you buy a existing one?
Right in between. So
that's like an interesting point. You're going to have to define the in between on that.
Just like you, I did everything wrong, and we did everything wrong. Like I said, I had a couple of partners, and we started a business from scratch. So we did not buy a franchise location or something like that. And we also didn't acquire a restaurant and just sort of keep the marquee and take it over or make it our own. We bought a lease, I should say we negotiated a lease in a space that did already have a restaurant in it historically. And so there hadn't been anything in it operating for at least a couple of years, maybe even longer. So you already know where this is going. If you're not, it's like you can't park a car in the garage for 3 years and then go turn it on. Well, it's kind of like a restaurant. Just because it had been built out originally as a restaurant and had a restaurant operating in it for 15 years, it had not been operated in for some years. And so we were just silly and naive enough to think, oh, well, hey, this was already a restaurant. It's got a huge kitchen. It's got all the stuff. It's got the reach-ins, the walk-ins, the under counter. It's got built-in salamanders. It's got plate heaters. It's got everything, right? And then you come to realize that those things, when they sit around for years, they're all garbage. I mean, literally garbage. And so not only through just cash flow of the business for the next 4.5 years, did we basically have to just keep fixing and replacing things nonstop because they would just fail on a Tuesday, on a Saturday, whenever. But the air conditioning, all those condensers and rooftop units were garbage. The walk-ins, actually the layout of the restaurant, this was probably the biggest challenge to finding success. We had a 6,400 square foot restaurant.
Wow. In DC proper?
Gargantuan. In DC, in prime Dupont Circle real estate prices. And the front of house was 3,100 square feet.
That's insane. That kitchen must have been massive.
So we were paying for 6,400 square feet and we were driving revenue off of less than half.
Were you parking cars in the other half? What were you doing?
Literally, there were 2 kitchens. There was the main kitchen on the first floor. There was an entire kitchen on the second floor with 4 walk-ins, one of them a double walk-in. So really 5 walk-ins, a dumb waiter, a full prep kitchen, basically a duplicate of everything that was in the main kitchen, which for the 4.5 years we ran the restaurant, that entire space was basically storage. Just we were paying for something and getting zero use out of it because the restaurant in the space before us was fine dining and, had a much higher price point, a much higher ticket, was having a staff of 15 or 20 working in the back of the house every night of the week and was turning, 2.5 turns a night at a $200 a table price point. And we were selling sort of tapas-y style small plates and trying to make more money off the bar service, the cocktail program. And so it was a challenge. And yeah, like I said, you just do every single thing wrong and learn from it, hopefully pretty quickly.
The weird skills you learn in opening a restaurant, like navigating the permit process. Man, I still go back to permits in DC.
Oh yeah.
Just a night. Walk me through. I remember vividly having this experience when like the first day, or maybe it was the night before we opened, sitting in there with nobody in there and thinking, this is my restaurant. And I don't really know what's going to happen with it. Do you remember that moment?
It's a great question. What a really terrific question. I will tell you that I probably didn't have that one single crystallized memory or moment, but I had a lot of them in a short period of time, a lot of sort of a similar feeling in a short period of time. We brought a lot of people through the
back. Paint me the picture. Tell me the story of one of those moments.
We took a lot of people through the space before it was open, for the months that we were working on it and trying to get it ready. And so, one thing that I think I've always been good at, and I don't know, I hope I'm better at it today than ever, but I think I was decent at it then, was like asking people's opinions about things. And it didn't always mean that I was going to do what you gave me. But I listened, and I really tried to learn from your mistakes and from your wins, and have those influence and sort of impact the way that I might try something, or that we might try something. And so we brought a lot of people through the space in the months leading up to opening. And so, I don't think I had that sort of, again, crystallized feeling the night before we opened the doors. We even did run sort of a friends and family or a soft opening for a while, probably for probably close to a month.
Well, that's a good month. Those are feel good. You get the little things wrong, but everybody tells you how great you are, how amazing this is going to be.
Yep. And a lot of trial and error on the menu. We weren't hugely capitalized at all. I mean, like, we did almost all of the work in the restaurant ourselves. I mean, knocking down walls and, painting and just doing everything. I always say that the best thing a restaurant does for an owner or manager or whatever is it turns you into a Swiss Army knife. And if you don't turn it into a Swiss Army knife, you very quickly fail. And so I always say, look, I'm not better than my grill man or better than my best bartender or better than anybody that I hired to do a specific role and who was pretty good at it. I'm not better even than the pretty good people, let alone the great people. But for 5 or 50 minutes, I can push you out of the way, tell you you're acting like a moron, show you how it's done, and then say, you can either step back in and you can take this over now and get your head on straight, or I can replace you. Because, people get complacent quickly. And when you're in the weeds, look, the culture is important, but when you're in the weeds, you just need people around you that are willing to trudge ahead forward, arm in arm. And
I think some people that miss this, that don't come from restaurants, there's a real currency in that. Can my boss come in and wash the dishes like me? Will he jump on the line? Does he know what good looks like? Otherwise, I'm not going to have a lot of respect for him.
I was fixing AC units. I was plunging toilets. I was stepping on the grill station, wash my hands in between those last two. I was stepping into the grill station, cooking steaks, dropping fries, whatever it was, right? Washing dishes, like you said, sweeping and mopping up a shattered glass. It didn't matter. You had to check your ego or whatever at the door, throw an apron on and get it done.
I remember getting a piece of advice right before I walked in for the first day to take over. And some guy called me, been in the restaurant industry forever. And he said, Matt, what's your game plan for tomorrow? I said, I'm going to come in. We're going to do everything right. We're going to, enforce this, this, and this. He said, Matt, that's a formula for failure, right? Like, don't go in and shake everything up. Instead, go in quiet and start doing the work, right? If people see you doing the work, they will rally around you. But if you come in and start saying you're going to change everything, it's not going to work out for you. You need the people.
It's very true. It's extremely true. And we changed a lot of things along the way. We did a lot of, little micro pivots along the way. I mean, gosh, we changed our menu probably end to end 3 or 4 times in the first 2 years we were open, which was stupid, very stupid. But we did kind of land in a place that worked really well. You do have to try new things, but again, it should be about getting from A to B and trying to mitigate the pendulum swings to get from A to B, and not get to A to B like this, right?
So now you're on the technology side of things. What did you learn in the restaurant that you've been able to apply just as far as running a technology firm?
I'll step away from tech for a second and just say some of the things I learned about running a business, right? Or just, being a member of a very small crew of the management team or whatever you want to call it, right? When you know what it's like to go to sleep at night and wonder if the checks that you gave people at the end of the shift are going to bounce the next day, you know what it's like to run a business. I mean, like, people get brought in to run companies. People have been CEOs of big companies and or whatever, right? Chief sales officers, big roles, big name roles, and they don't really know what it's like to run a company. 2 times I've been at a company from scratch, right? And running that restaurant really gives you some calluses and some perspective on what it really means to run a company, to, again, know what it's like to fear the payroll bouncing, know what it's like to question, to have to know where the line is between, can I serve that thing that we still have a lot of, or do I need to throw it away? Is it still in its prime? Is it still going to offer a great product to the paying customer? Or do I need to toss it? And you have to be able to make really tough decisions because restaurants don't have money laying around. I don't care really how successful they are. They don't have money laying around. And so they're very cash flow dependent. And if you have a bad Saturday or a bad Sunday and you're a more weekend heavy business, you're going to have a tight week that week because when you get your deposits on Monday, that pays for all the checks you wrote on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, right? And so understanding frugality, understanding again the pressures, and actually wanting the ball. Give me the ball, coach. Like, hey, this is the best hitter on the other team. Put me on the mound, right? Like, I want the ball. I might mess it up. I have confidence in myself. I might mess it up, but I want to put that burden or that pressure on myself. And I think those are the things I learned in the restaurant industry from owning and operating a restaurant. And for the tech company here, for Q, I mean, it's understanding that even more important than the technology is building a platform for people, is building a company that, the people that work here, this is their livelihood. They're choosing to do one thing that you can't do with anyone else in any capacity, which is, where do you spend the majority of your time? Because when you're not sleeping, the majority of your time is spent in your job, more than with your family. And if we have, close to 300 people working with us Monday through Friday, and many of us through the weekends and at night and early in the morning and so on and so forth, you better understand the gravity of that reality. And it better get you excited and give you power, and not power but like give you the power to go on and to do hard things. And just like we said in the restaurant space, like, when somebody needs help, give them the push, the pull, or lock arm in arm, whichever is necessary in that moment. And those are the kinds of things that I think the restaurant helped me sort of put that fire in my belly, almost, as my father used to say. So
post restaurants, I went back and I got my MBA, and I remember going through management, classes. And it was like, this is a joke. Like, this is like the ABCs. Like, I cannot imagine that this is what corporate America is doing. Why would you need to teach us this? Because in the restaurant industry, the feedback loop is so quick. You say the wrong thing, the guy on the line takes his apron off and says, F you, and just leave. Right? Like, you have to learn, versus you go to the corporate world and turns out Billy left his job, drove here, right? Can't lose the job because then it kind of screws up his resume. I can treat him like whatever. And like, he's going to do it. And it's toxic and not a great way to manage people. Restaurants really do breed that.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
All right. So going back to the technology side of things, how did you transition into technology? Was there some event? Was it just, hey, I'm sick of low margins. Like, I hear these tech firms are making money. What did it look like?
Look, I love people who have like a watershed sort of crystallization moment. Like what you almost suggest there a little bit. Hey, I owned a restaurant for 4 years, and I always saw this perpetual inefficiency with XYZ. And I said, I'm going to make that better. And look, I mean, like, that's what most entrepreneurs, that's how most entrepreneurs work. That's not how it worked for me. Just being honest, being transparent. For me, I always joke that I've always been a closeted tech dweeb. Like, I mean, look, I was like 5, 6 years old and I was building computers with my uncle. By building, I mean, you get a shell, you plug the hard drive in, you solder a thing, like not like anything too crazy, but yeah, building computers with my uncle in the 80s and just, I've always liked technology. I'm a big car guy. And so there's a parallel between the way that cars have evolved and the technology and that sort of evolved around it. Also, just like understanding things from an engineering perspective. It's just these things interest me. I look at everything through the lenses of engineering and economics. And so the way I distill economics is really just decision making. And then engineering, everything can be looked at through the lens of engineering, a relationship, a car's engine, the database that you chose to build your technology system upon. So I really look through everything through the lenses of engineering, being able to break it down and build it back up, and economics. And again, just sort of like decision making. And so for those reasons, when I was in the restaurant, I did see a lot of opportunities for failure and really just at a macro level, a bunch of disjointed systems. And so what I did see and had some really great conversations with some other gentlemen, a few other folks who had more experience. One of them in particular had much more experience actually building restaurant technology. We started really ideating and sort of going back and forth on where the friction points were and where the challenges were on order taking technology. What year is
this, by the way, just so I have some idea?
This was 2000. What is it? 25, probably 2013 or so. So 2013. So remember then, like Micros and NCR, right? And like OpenTable. I mean, those were like the technology.
That's big innovation, right? The restaurant industry has figured out online ordering.
Yes.
Like breakthrough,
right? And Olo was already around, and Toast has just come out, and Revel was already a few years out. Oh gosh, iPads for tech. That's neat. And then a bunch of the really early cloud POSs. I was going to say all of whom, but most of which are gone today, right? But like Breadcrumb and like Clover, I guess, is around, but it's around. It's a big company, but it's SMB and independents and all those kinds of ones. And so you were starting to see like innovation in what it looked and felt like in a restaurant, but it still wasn't actually really innovating like the disjointed systems. And so working with these other couple gentlemen, the original idea was actually something like, hey, how can we marry, unsurprisingly, like a really reliable POS and all the sort of CRM aspects of an OpenTable, if you will. And then maybe even the notion of like loyalty, sort of bundle those things together so that, Matt, when you walk into my restaurant, I know who you are. I know where you like to sit. I know what vodka you like in your martini and how you take it. I know that you love, this dish and this other one. I even, all of that kind of stuff. And I'm proactively informing the staff of who you are without even having to engage, so that when you engage, you're having a great experience. I mean, like, period, right? And that was like the original idea. And transparently, I came into the business, or it wasn't a business yet, but I came into the idea after these other two guys already had like that idea that I just articulated. And I was like, okay, well, that's going to take a lot of money and time. And I don't think we're going to be able to have that time or get that money. And at that time, right, 2013, what was taking over the restaurant industry? Fast casual, right? And not only was fast casual the only really meaningfully growing part of the restaurant industry, but it was also where private capital was being deployed. And so wherever private capital is being deployed, there's probably a higher propensity to consume technology. And also, I live, and you're different, a bit, but like I live in a largely 97 to 99% annual rip and replace type market, right? It's not an organic growth market. It's a rip and replace market. And so anything that we could do to tap more into just a little bit of organic growth would be good, right? And so for those reasons, it was like, hey, let's try to focus more on the backbone of a commerce stack for fast casual chains. And so our first customer was a 45 unit Better Burger concept here in the DC area. And I'm very proud that that was our first customer. I think it's a differentiator for us from most of our peers because we didn't start in the end of independence or on the corner coffee shops or what have you, and then try to sort of sell 500 of those and then like, you know, raise a big round and then try to build enterprise because doesn't everybody want to go to enterprise and so on and so forth. We just said, no, like we actually want to start whatever the definition is, but we want to start at enterprise. Like we want to think through this quandary from day one. And so, yeah, we did. And you know, again, a little of this along the way, right? But we had a real pivotal moment in our history about seven years ago, which I'll tell you about if you want to hear about it. But yeah, the point is, yeah, first customer, 45 unit chain, and learn a lot of learning since then.
It's a soundbite I hear a lot. You either start with the independent and you work your way up to larger, enterprise customers, or you start at enterprise, and they're very different paths. I never really got the answer of why they're such different paths. Why does building for the enterprise, the start, a different experience?
It's all about scale. Literally, it's all about scale and perspective. So if you build for the independents out of the gate or the ones and threes out of the gate, then you're inherently building a thing. And there's no wrong answer, by the way. Like going that way doesn't mean that you're good or bad, and going this way doesn't mean you're better or worse. But it does mean that there are different things you're focused on. And so when you start with independence, you are much more focused generally. We've seen in the last dozen years that and frankly, in the history of the 20 years before that, you're probably much more focused on like supporting the individual restaurateur because you're selling to Jim or Stacy, who you met and pressed palms with, and like they have your phone number. And if there's a problem, you go there at midnight and you fix the thing, right? And so you probably focus much more on the individual user, the need of an individual user. And you try to scale, which I think is very difficult. You try to scale that type of individual approach to technology. And what I think ends up happening sometimes, unfortunately, not for the wrong reasons, in fact, for the right reasons, you kind of get this disconnect between what you're saying you can do and what you want to do and deliver and what you can actually deliver. Because how can you deliver a thing that serves 500 different people's needs and wants when you're really engaging with them on a direct basis?
I was saying, I think that's one of the things that AI is kind of advertised to be. How can we have a platform that really can be both tailored to you and work, by using AI? Do you see that at all?
I think I would be, not I think I would be, I'm bullish on it. I still think, and so the bifurcation in the path of the question earlier is like, do you go the, bottom up, or do you go sort of side in or top down, right? Either independent up or sort of mid-market enterprise down. The reason we chose the latter was because, and certainly 12 years ago and 7 years ago, when we kind of like had a bit of a, not pivot, but a reckoning, was that we knew that we couldn't achieve or accomplish what 500 different individual business owners, small business owners, or what a chain with 2,000 or 3,000 restaurants and still has like 250 franchisees. We couldn't achieve that sort of at the lower level without thinking through and acting through and building through the lens of scalability. Because when you build 500 things, it's hard to bring them to a collective point. But when you start at the point, you can distribute into the 500 much more effectively and efficiently. So I think that I'm probably quite bullish on AI being able to almost like fill in the interstitial tissue, for lack of putting it, fill in the gray area. So sort of localize a product suite. But if you don't have that macro level enterprise scalability, resiliency, stability, and just a good, clean data model to be able to distribute and then use AI to help make it more effective for people, you're probably you're I don't know, paddling upriver, right?
Before we get into actually the restaurants and the POS side of things, I'm curious, you as a technology provider who's bullish on AI, how do you look at deploying AI in a large organization like yours internally?
Yeah, internally. So great question, because I think that's where like the real opportunities are right now. There's a little bit that we can find and that brands I think can find that can be pushed outside and provide value for your customers, whomever they are, other businesses or consumers or whatever your particular business is that's leveraging AI. But from an internal perspective, you better be looking at AI from a writing code perspective, frankly, like just full stop. You better be looking at leveraging AI from an efficiency and an effectivity and a quality standpoint with respect to writing code. If you're not, you're in trouble. You also have to be really, really diligent and smart about what that really means. Because if you're just like, oh, I have a coder who's like putting queries into like GPT and like getting code snippets coming out of it and plugging it into my code base, like the world now knows your code base. So like, you have to be smart about the way that you leverage AI and you're using it internally, but you better be looking at it in coding. You better be looking at it in QA. Better be looking at it that we have a proliferation of information dumping, right? And I don't just mean like the fact that any question you have, you can ask GPT or go to Google or whatever, and you can answer probably in 300 milliseconds. But also the fact that my teams, the whole company, anybody can ask me a question 24/7, 365 on Slack, or a customer can, call me, right? Or Slack me if we have shared Slack channels and things like that. So there is instant access to information and a plethora of that information. We have meetings, Zooms, in person. We have, calls just on our mobile to mobile calls. How do we get all of that impressive amount of information, not just like recorded or in a repository, but how do we actually learn from the conversations had and disseminate that information effectively and efficiently to the right people within your organization that can learn from that and benefit from that benefit both your customer and your company. And so things like, again, internal note-taking tools that sort of bubble things up to the surface and can share information across teams, squads, the execs, et cetera. I'm finding an immense amount of value. And the last one I'd tell you is there's probably nothing harder, and even my engineering team and product and so on and so forth would still probably agree. Nothing we do is easy, but selling to a 750 or 7,000 unit chain over the course of 30 months, it's one of the hardest things I think in the world. It's like shooting a rocket to the moon. Like it seems that way at least, right? I know, big statement. I get it, but the amount of information shared between you and a prospect over the course of 30 months and thousands of hours of meetings, calls, emails, et cetera, is, we're talking terabytes.
Yeah,
and so
you're literally digitizing the entire centralized workflows of these organizations, which are already complicated, and you have to understand them and turn that into software. That's very intimate.
It is, and so we use a product that I don't really like give big shout outs to companies that we use internally very much, but I will say we use a product called Gong, and it is the most useful sales or sales adjacent, although we use it much more so than just in sales, by the way. But it is probably my favorite product that we've ever bought on the front of house side of our business, the sales and the go to market and the customer engagement side of our business, because it just listens in on your Zooms. It surfaces up smart things to the top of the notes. You can search it. You can say, hey, I know that I talked with this brand about this thing, and it will it'll search through all of the calls that you had. It will find when, the director of ops talked about this thing and said, I don't need that, which is always the one where like, they told us they didn't need it. or said like, I do need it, and this is what I need it to look like. And you can take that 7-minute snippet and you can send it to a product leader, or you can send it to 2 engineers or whatever to add the context so that the efficiency and the effectivity of what they're building and delivering is spot on. And so, yeah, Gong, the AI in Gong is relatively rudimentary. I wouldn't say it's like earth shattering AI, but the value of that product for us is well, it's invaluable.
That was very timely. We rely heavily on note takers. I find it allows you to be much more present in a conversation without having to jot things down. Ours, of course, just got acquired by another company, and that's that kind of thing. So maybe
acquisitions, M&A.
Exactly. I get a kick out of what you were saying on the smart and thoughtful way that you can implement AI, especially on the coding side of things. It's one of the very few times I can honestly say I'm so glad that we're a small, nimble company right now and not a large organization, because, it does allow you to do a ton of new things and really, really quickly. But, the beautiful thing about, enterprise grade software is its security and reliability. How do you think about security and reliability and them almost being contradictory to innovation?
They are, by the way, right? Not almost, they are. But I think what I like to do is like reframe, right? I'm a big believer in reframing things. And so I think through a traditional lens of being innovative and falling forward fast and, more product releases sooner. And, sure, maybe I have to claw something back because I released it was broken or something. In general, it is much better than like one release every 6 months. Okay. Like I'm all in on that all day long. I've been all in on that since day one, and we still are today. But security and stability, you can innovate around security and stability. So I'm reframing your question, because innovation is like, how do I build more product sooner and more valuable to users today instead of always playing feature catch up? And in order to stay stable and secure, doesn't that hold this back? Yes, but I think you can also really focus on innovation around stability and security, and leveraging ways that can be less of a hindrance and a blocker, pulling back your ability to innovate new products, features, and enhancements, et cetera. And actually, maybe if you're lucky, can actually empower the ability to deliver things faster and smoother. And so yeah, we have a whole security team, as you would imagine, but we have a security team. We have not just a leader in that department that AWS for a number of years and brings a lot of modern systems to us and to the organization that can help find gray areas and find vulnerabilities and find bad things before others do, because all tech has vulnerabilities, all tech has bugs, and all tech will mess up. Like, that's a reality. But we also think through the lenses of stability and security, like permeating through our engineering organization, through our product organization, and through our sales organization. As you know, when you work in sales, and you're in sales all day long, right? I mean, when you work in sales, your prospects are sharing incredibly relevant but very, very sensitive information with you on a regular basis. And so, when I was in finance, when you were in finance, there was the Chinese wall, as they call it, right? And I knew a lot of stuff up here, being on the investment bank side, the M&A side, and the investment banking side, that the public was not allowed to know about, right? Like, hey, there was going to be an M&A transaction between these two public companies, or there was going to be a follow-on offering of equity or what have you, and that would impact the current equity share price and so on and so forth. And so the way that you think through engagements does have to sort of start and end with security. And I do think that larger organizations look at security and your ability to be more stable and secure as an area for innovation as well.
So going back to it, if you're able to do it securely and you're able to bring in AI to supercharge your programming and all of that, what are the outputs on a product side that you're seeing today? Like, I look at UIs. Our guys are all data scientists and data engineers. Like, they don't believe in colors or fonts or they're like hardcore engineer guys. Like, their stuff is ugly as sin. We have pumped out more beautiful UIs in the last 3 weeks than we have in the last 3 years. Kind of curious where you're seeing as a technology organization, where it's moving the needle on a product side.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm going to commiserate with you a little bit because for a very long time we built our product solely through the lens of engineering and sort of technological prowess. And so it is kind of funny that a lot of our UI is, I think it's nice, it's clean, it's tight these days. It's efficient and effective, and very responsive. But for a very long time, it was basically looked like wireframes, and anybody not in the business doesn't know what that, or in technology doesn't know what that means. But basically, it looks like what a developer or a product lead literally like puts together in, for lack of a better term, on a PowerPoint slide. Say this is what a product is going to look and feel like. So it's like squares, rectangles, like Times New Roman font,
Think Craigslist in a lot of
Craigslist. Think, listserv, etc. But the sad truth, and I'm kind of going a little adjacent to your question, but the sad truth is that the bar was so incredibly low when it comes to point of sale or back office or leading enterprise companies. It's just been so low that like providing a little color pop. We're a gesture-based UI, which today isn't that unique anymore, but 12 years ago most certainly was big time. And quite frankly, a lot of our peers still aren't. It's still like what I call like a point and click. Every time you touch the POS screen, it's like a mouse click. And so, just bring a fresh approach. I don't know that I know how to answer your question, Matt. I mean, I don't know that I'm there in a real salient.
Well, look, you got two guys that grew up in the kitchen, talking about AI and product advancement. We're probably not the best to be speaking about.
I will give you one, is that for a long time you had on my world, and actually on yours, you build a product that people click on, right? You do want to see things like, for lack of a better term, for the average Joe, you want to see like where people are clicking on things and how they're interacting with your software, right? In the web world, if you have a mobile ordering or a web front end for online ordering, and you start seeing an increase in like cart abandonment, you want to understand like what people are clicking on and what paths they're going down that are leading to a higher cart abandonment rate, because there's nothing more pricey in e-com than cart abandonment, right? And so it's not any different. It shouldn't be any different. And you building a nice, easy to navigate and pleasurable to navigate, back end for ClearCOGS or us and our POS or our administrative portal or what have you. And so AI can definitely help there a lot. Like Springboard helped there. In having a keystroke logger, for lack of a better term, to understand what people are doing when they hit brick walls and when things become ineffective or inefficient. AI can be a big leapfrog type event that can really illustrate to developers and hopefully product leads and then developers where, how, and why you can build more efficient to navigate, more pleasurable to use software.
All right, so get into Q a little bit, but also kind of put it in terms of what is the POS today, in a restaurant? Where are we at technology-wise? Where do you fit into that?
Yeah. Look, when we rebranded 7 years ago, we said 6.5 years ago, we said our tagline, our byline was beyond POS. And people thought we were crazy. They're like, you're not even a POS company yet. Like, I barely even know who you guys are. And we were like, well, okay. But we're beyond POS. We are not just the, replacing, you don't just call us when you want to replace the black plastic box on your countertop with another one that's half the price and in the cloud, right? That's not who we are. Instead, we are really a data model. We're a data idea. And we have front ends. We have ways, both virtual and literal physical front ends, by which you can engage this underlying commerce platform, this unified commerce platform. And we were the first technology company in the restaurant space to bring that term, or that now acronym, to market, a unified commerce platform. Now, we didn't make that up.
Why were you the first? Yeah. And why did you want to be that?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually an easy answer. I still vividly remember, you asked me earlier, do you remember the night before you opened? I don't remember that, but I do remember this. I was in the conference room of an old office of ours with my CMO and Amir, our CEO, and I said, guys, I got to tell you about something. I got to talk to you about why I think we should brand ourselves as a unified commerce platform. And they were like, oh, what? And I said, look, this is not a new term. I didn't make it up. At that point, 7 years ago, it had already been being used in retail, but nobody had used it in restaurants, not one. And I always say, like, I'm kind of the face of this company. I talk to people a lot. Inevitably, I have a sales hat, like in general, right?
But more importantly, you had sales hair.
Yeah. So I tend not to say always, never, best, worst, black, white, 0, 1, right? Like there's always a little bit in between. And I like to contextualize that and give the color behind it. But we were the first to use that term, a unified commerce platform. And now there are a few that use it, and that's fine. The good thing is that our definition of that is still very unique. And it's always been about the underlying data model. If you can unify the creation of the data in a singular place, everybody talks about data and they start talking about post-transactional data. That's what everybody starts talking about. They're always talking about post-transactional data. I want to know who bought what and when and like who took onions off of this thing and whatever. That's what matters. But you can't distill that into functional sort of parity with one another from that data coming in from all of those different sources, the POS, a kiosk, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Olo, or a web front end or a custom mobile app and 27 other things. Unless there's some sort of uniformity to the sort of germination of where that data comes from, where it starts. And so at Q, we start that data in one place. So when you build a SKU, you should love this. When you build a SKU for your bacon cheeseburger for a burger chain, if it's SKU 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you build that in Q and you start building what we call context and versioning around that bacon cheeseburger, what kind of cheese and what the options are and condiments and what sides can go with it. And I don't know, temperature and all these different things that are relevant attributes of a bacon cheeseburger. Yeah, sure. Every POS kind of should be able to do that. Right. But as soon as you multiply that by 2 or by 12, because it needs to go to DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, on online ordering, web front end, a custom mobile app, maybe a kiosk company, the POS itself, and 5 other things that has to be able to go through the drive-through. It has to be able to do carryout, dine in, all of those different things. You start creating contexts that in most systems are really just duplicating or cloning things. And then let's take that 100 steps further. When you're a 1,000-unit chain or a 5,000-unit chain and you have 250 franchisees that have between 1 and 400 restaurants each, and they want to price it uniquely, but the franchisor doesn't want them to be able to not sell an item, but they do give them the permission to be able to add an item that's unique to their brand or, their location or locations. And they give them ranges of, tolerance levels by which they can change pricing on items, but they have to carry an LTO, and the LTO can only be at these 2 price points, but the burgers or the shakes can be at anything within this range. In order to be able to have that, you instantly go to N number of sort of deviations from the norm. And so now you're living in a world where there are 100 SKUs for the bacon cheeseburger. And then what happens? People like you have to figure it all out.
Just onboard a customer with I have 25 menu items and 1,800 different unique, identify.
And so for Q, what we do is that bacon cheeseburger is literally SKU 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then through, for lack of a better term, sort of the breadcrumb trail associated with it. And it matters where it's rendered up, right? Where and when and in front of whom, and the way that you engaged it. It can change the context and the version around that SKU so that then when the order comes in the form of a transaction, which is then when people start thinking about caring about the data, it is already in a native state. It is in a form by which anyone or any tech can actually start to slice and dice that information and make relevant decisions on it in real time or later that day or tomorrow or what have you. And then I think this is where the kicker is. Even if you can sort of cobble together some systems that can talk with each other quickly enough to get close to that, you then have to go back to 12 different places to make the changes that you learned that were, informed by the insights you got from the data once you got it into one actionable place. But with Q, we close the loop because you can still go right back into our back end and change any of those attributes about that item, no matter where they live, even in third-party systems or marketplaces or whatever, because it's all germinating from a single place.
And I assume that's why you're built for enterprise on day one, because you think of those things.
That is a reason why a lot of larger chains these days are interested in learning more about it.
Okay, so let's go to the best in class software versus the all-in-one, because I mean that feels very much directionally towards, the all-in-one solution. But then again, I could also see the case where, well, no, if you have standardized data, you can bring in best of class softwares. How do you think about it? It sounds like it's the latter.
It's the latter. It's for sure the latter. And I'm pretty opinionated on this one. I don't think that 27-point solutions works today. I'm not saying it can't work in 5 years, but I don't think it works today. I mean, I have the luxury and pain of talking to really big restaurant chains on a regular basis and small ones. And they all have the same problems. And it's not budgetary. I mean, everybody's got budget problems, but it's not budget that holds you back. It's just the ability to make things work. And so this idea that you're going to bring 27 perfect best-in-class point solutions together and the magical API, the universal salve that is the API, is going to solve for all the problems with data bidirectionally and everything's going to live in harmony and unicorns are going to fly around. It doesn't work that way. And so we do not believe that an all-in-one platform is the best. We also equally don't believe that 27-point solutions is going to crush it. We do believe in fewer, better, tighter, more well-aligned, both from a technology perspective and from, quite frankly, a leadership perspective and a shared future of the company perspective and what's important. So there's been omni-channel POS for 15 plus years. And the reason that omni-channel POS had all of their own front ends was because it was the only way to deliver on the promise of hey, you can go to one place and you can control everything, but you have to buy my POS, my loyalty, my kiosk, my digital menu board, my everything else you can dream up. And it was a technological hindrance that made omni-channel POS what it was 5 and 15 years ago. And frankly, what some are still doing today. And so it's because of that data model that we're talking about here that I went like this, right? When you said, is it because of your data model that sort of unlocks the ability to use best-in-class solutions? The answer is yes. If we can still be responsible for creating the germination, as I say, of that data in the form of an ID, if that ID then goes up and lives in a best-in-class, like a DoorDash or whatever, they're certainly a best-in-class for DSPs, or it goes and it lives in a beautiful mobile application that, a Big Four digital services agency built for a large company in America, right? Then that's still unequivocally best-in-class technologies that you can and should leverage to make your business hum. But because I built the item ID down here and it went up here and it lives here now, when those orders from that point forth transact, that data still comes in a native data model and allows, and it sort of empowers the rest of that closed circle value proposition that I talked about.
Well, I don't think anybody necessarily thinks, hey, I need to have the 27 best-in-class pieces of software work together. But unfortunately, I think that there are 100 brands that want a different 7 to all work together harmoniously. And if there's 100 different point solutions for you guys, that's countless different ways that they can all come together. Does that work? How does that work in practicality today?
It can. And I still think the approach that we have best sets us up for success there, but it's really hard. You're asking the question because it's a quandary. It's hard. It's still hard. But I do think there's a reality that when you built a product set, right? And ultimately you have a new use case. Somebody says, hey, look, I'm a POS company. I was built 20 years ago and I'm a really good POS company. I do lots and lots of features and functions. and I'm stable. And like, those are great things. Those are some of the most important things about a POS, right? But then someone comes to you, a brand of yours, and says, hey, somebody, I need this digital arm to work with my system, with my POS. I want to use them for web ordering, right? Well, what happens? You say, oh, well, I built this whole thing here and it works really well. And you say, okay, I'll talk to them. So you talk to them and they're like, hey, I need these 17 endpoints. And you're like, oh, okay. All right. I think I can do that. All right. I can find those 17 things where they live in my system, and I can build an API over here. And I can surface those 17 things and I'll give them to you. And you can listen, take, and you can push stuff back in. Okay. So we did that. Ooh, right. All right. Now I have to do that a second time. Ooh, okay. Now it's for a loyalty company. And then, you do that 300 times. What you're doing is you're building APIs for specific use cases. And so taking that, sort of peeling that onion back, that's untenable. That is untenable. And I think that's what a lot of companies and lots of the different industries and sectors of the economy have run into, almost in this like hybrid state between actually engineered for cloud types of enterprise services and older, really successful, really value adding, really good, mature products that weren't built in the cloud or built for the cloud. And so if you think through cloud first and enterprise and stability and scalability first, and you think through a totally different data model, then what we do, Matt, is we actually consume the same APIs across our whole stack. It's microservices architecture. It's actually sort of a system of atomic level services and bounded context, which is a little tech dorky. But that's actually what we do. And so since our own system is communicating to itself through APIs, we can either take that API and just expose it directly to an end user, to a brand or to a partner, or we can build a sort of a safety net around our APIs that provides a singular place that vendors and customers, our customers, can go to basically touch any part of our system. And so that then is where you can be in a place where you can scale with integrations and actually have 15 back office partners or 10 loyalty providers. And the next one that comes in and the next one and the next one, it's actually almost easier and easier and easier because you have a one-stop shop of APIs that already surface relevant information to different users and through different capacities across the platform.
All right. So that's the best in class POS today, right? We're not just a hardware solution. We're not just cloud-based, but we provide the data structure standardization for you to be able to run an enterprise brand at scale. Because frankly, there's no context in the data, right? So like, I need to have structured data to make sure everything's accurate. I imagine that's today, but one of the things AI is really good at is being able to take unstructured data and context around that data and make it, fairly structured. How does that kind of flow into the POS of the future and AI powered POS? Like, how do you envision the POS company 5 to 10 years out?
Much different than it is today. First of all, just much different than it is today. A lot of people have talked a lot about in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, like, is the POS dead? And I love that headline because it's a conversation starter, right?
It's a good conversation starter.
It's a great conversation starter. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? What does it mean to Susan? Right. And so I think that when it comes to the POS, what it looks like today and what it will look like in 5 or 10 years, look, 10 years, I'm not even going to opine on, right? 5 years is already, I'm not smart enough to know what's happening 5 years from now. That's for sure. But I do see, and we all see things changing at an increased clip, right? And so if you're a full service restaurant, like, I don't know, do you even need point of sale terminals sitting on countertops anymore? Probably not. Does a bar even need them, right? Like, why can't you just walk into a bar? I mean, at least like a high volume bar. Why can't you just walk into a bar that has a bunch of little pucks on the bar top, and you just tap your phone on it and you're like, I'll take a Heineken, and you pay for it in Apple Pay and you're done. And I get there's ID and all, but still, like, you can get past that quickly, easily. I mean, Toast does a great job with their handhelds in full service environments. challenging if the Wi-Fi goes down, but nevertheless, it does a great job putting an order taking device in a handheld of a person standing in front of the customer at a table. So is the POS dead? Is the traditional old school version of a POS dead in full service? Probably already is. When it comes to really high volume QSRs, 24-hour operations, counter service operations, I would be surprised if even in 5 years, like there still aren't POS terminals on the countertops. I would probably be surprised about that. But the dependence on them can and should continue to erode, or not erode, but mitigate. There should be less and less dependence on the POS terminal sitting on the countertops next year and 3 years from now and 5 years from now. What they should be looked at more so, because also restaurants, they don't have money flowing through them at all times. Like, sure, I'd love to buy a bunch of new tech, right? A bunch of new hardware. I'll invest in tons of new hardware. It's hard, right? And so we should always be looking at ways where we can extend the suite of services within the four walls of the restaurant in efficient and effective ways, hopefully leveraging a lot of the technologies that are already, a lot of the hardware, physical technology that's already there. And how can we integrate with newer pieces of hardware that are slowly getting layered into the four walls of the restaurant? I don't know, like, automated fryers and temperature sensors, IoT related things. How can we be more efficient and effective with respect to everything from energy consumption to, the HVAC controls within the building and so on and so forth? All leveraging off of a lot of compute power that already lives in the four walls of a restaurant. And so what we've done there in this regard is we've actually put an edge device into the restaurant, and we've added sort of a layer of data fidelity and data efficiency and stability and security down into the four walls of the restaurant. You talked a lot about security earlier, but us putting that edge device in the restaurant really helps the restaurant scale, helps the technology and the services that we can provide scale. And we see a future state whereby other technologies can actually live on this edge node in the restaurant and be much more efficient and effective in accomplishing their goals within the four walls of a restaurant. Because guess what's expensive, by the way? Cloud.
I thought you were going to say people. I think people are getting more expensive than cloud.
Well, people are expensive too, but I'm not in the business, and you can put a quote on this. I'm not in the business of building tech that just, replaces people. I mean, I'm not in that business. There are some things that do that, and I'm not going to get into politics about this or that, and we shouldn't, or this or that.
No, but it goes back to what we were talking about. As you were talking,
people more effective, do more with the same.
You talked about the guy at the bar. I was literally having dinner with our team at Gibson's in Chicago, and we had a great bartender. Yeah. Takes the orders. He's fantastic. And then he spends 3 minutes, putting them in. Why is he not saying to a microphone, I've got 4 martinis, this, that, and the other for this check, right? Frees up 3 minutes of his time. And everything you said really sounded more like the opportunity of AI within the POS is how do we capture the data more efficiently and bring it in to relieve some of that stress? Is that,
it's a big piece of it. And there's another area of like POS and beyond POS and Q and restaurants and tech that I think AI is maybe more ripe for supporting and empowering than the POS itself. And that's in the kitchen, right? So at least in fast casual and QSR, these days, there's almost not a fast casual and certainly not a QSR that doesn't have kitchen display or kitchen video screens, right? And so for the last 30 years, that's been like, it looks like it was written in 1992, and it's like blue, yellow, red, green. Maybe that's it. 4 colors, dot matrix style. It literally looks like it was 1992 still. And so how can we be in a place where we can leverage AI for both the orchestration aspects of what kitchen displays actually do, but also, what am I making at what time and for whom? But also maybe I need to put this thing in front of the line because I already know this customer is still 8 minutes out and this customer is only 3 minutes away. So maybe we can do things like that. But then also to your point about having maybe a headset or maybe some glasses or whatever, maybe I'm newer there and I see this, this chorizo quesadilla with X and Y, Z on it and P and Q and R. How do I make that? Right? Well, why can't I just ask order 26? Can you tell me what goes in that chorizo quesadilla? as I'm making this burrito or whatever it is, it's like, well, you start with one of our 12-inch burrito wrap. Oh, cool. Got that. And then make sure that you put 1 cup of our, queso, whatever, boom, 1 cup there, right? As I'm doing this other thing. And that's, believe it or not, that's also an application of AI. You can build systems to do something like that, but you can leverage AI to do things around that kind of interaction, that employee interaction, a lot faster and more effectively and efficiently than just building hard code around it. So we do love the idea of wearables, both for the hard and soft benefits in what we might be able to bring to the efficiency and effectivity of a kitchen.
Last question for you. In that world of that technology, how would that have affected your first restaurant back in DC?
It wouldn't have, man. I did everything wrong anyway. We did everything wrong. That's not a great answer, but
no, it's the truth.
I don't think tech could have helped us, man. Matt, I really don't think tech could have helped us. I'll tell you what tech could have done for us. And I think you'll appreciate this. But if we had something that could help us efficiently and economically viably build a menu, and maybe not tell me what to serve, but like, I want to have a Mexican theme, blah, blah, and whatever. And I'm looking for this price point or whatever. If I could have AI, which by the way, there are already systems, very, very nascent things, but there are already things that are helping with building menus and building items and building, efficiency of cross use of items and all that kind of stuff. So if I could help something build me an efficient menu, a menu that's efficient to order, a menu that uses a lot of items across different items, but not in a boring way. Right? That's a quandary in restaurants. And if it could know the sort of ease of which you can execute on these items, and then if I had a system that made it more cost effective for selling these different things and could tell me, hey, you're getting a little light on this thing. Why don't you run a special tomorrow night on X? And then if I then had maybe if I had a little bit of automation in the kitchen. Again, I'm not super bullish on just like a full end-to-end automated kitchen. I've tried them, not bullish on them. Not yet. I don't know what 10 years from now looks like. But a little bit of automation around some of those things, right? Like maybe a steak, when you're cooking steaks, it just tells you when to flip it. It knows that one's supposed to be medium rare. It knows the temperature. It's literally got an infrared on the grill top and it says flip now, boom, that steak's done. Let it rest for 2 minutes and put it on a plate. Those kinds of things, that's all tech. Much of that could be AI, could also be like simpler. But if we could do those kinds of things, it would have made all the difference in the world.
Niko, I appreciate you taking the time. This is fantastic.
Fun conversation, Matt. Thank you.